Hey everybody, good morning. I don't, I don't think I need a microphone, but I know that we're recording. I was promised just the audio. I know that it's going to be a little, as people trickle in, the first session type thing, but I'm glad to see you guys here. We've put together a couple of our alumni from our college and a few of our current students. We're here to discuss kind of the evolution of non-credit experiences, which has been a big part of our college, at least, for probably the last 6 years, as part of our students kind of engaging with the world. And so as that group of students each year grows and the faculty involvement grows on non-credit experiences, we're coming up against some interesting questions. And I also wanted to hear from our students. So part of running a session like this is selfish because I want to hear what students have to say because I don't always get to corner them. So as we were introduced, I'm Adam Pagal from the College of Science and Engineering International Office. We have two of our faculty here, Julian Marshall from Civil and Paul Imbritson from Electrical and Computer Engineering. Both faculty members have been faculty advisors for non-credit student groups that go abroad and have been involved in other types of experiences for students. We've had probably, other than our short-term for-credit programs, our biggest growth in our college in science and engineering experiences abroad have been in non-credit experiences over the last 10 years. So it's a great time to check in on that. Many of our students face very strict curriculum requirements, and so fitting in non-credit or somewhat alternative types of international experiences have gotten more popular. And some of our students are here. Scott's from EWB, Engineers Without Borders. Brian Bell is an alum of our college and the Engineers Without Borders program and the Akara Challenge in India. What am I missing? Anything else that you did?
That's good.
What?
That's good.
And then he did a master's degree in Europe and is now back in the Midwest with us. Alex did 2 summer international research appointments during his degree so far. You're not graduated yet, so we might send you abroad again. Patrick Delaney's here, and Patrick graduated before I was hired, so this is my first time meeting Patrick. But Paul Imbritson referred me to Patrick, and I've been researching you a little bit, but probably I would say a non-credit pioneer, because according to Paul, you just went to Nicaragua. It sounded almost by yourself?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, before engineers were getting into this type of thing, before student engineers were getting into developing nation work.
Yeah. And Patrick now runs a nonprofit, or are you and a for-profit?
And a for-profit.
Okay, so we'll hopefully have time to talk about that. Bright new ideas. And David Brakovich from Innovative Engineers, which is another student group that is engaged in energy production in Nicaragua, right? All right. I have some thoughts to share, and then I want to definitely have time for our students and our faculty to comment, and then we're happy to take questions. But there is probably over the last decade a push into internationalizing the experience of science and engineering students in the U.S. Our college was kind of an early adopter of the curriculum integration model. There are other universities getting involved in this, but the numbers of students in these fields having international experience have grown, and students are taking on bigger and bigger challenges, and it's exciting. They're going to be operating in a world where they need a global skill set. Just to give a broad sweep, we do have 4 credit opportunities through our college. But students, as I mentioned earlier, have been getting into more and more non-credit experiences. So in the late 90s, less than 15 students in our college, which has an undergraduate student population of 5,000, went abroad in a given year. We're now having students go all over the world for a lot of different experiences, probably more than a couple hundred a year. Still room for growth as a percentage of our graduating class. But we also, I think, we take a hit because students not earning credit are not officially counted as having gone abroad as part of their degree, as according to IIE, sorry, that's wrong. But for example, I think Brian's a great example because although he led multiple kind of experiences abroad, would have never actually been counted as an international experience student at the University of Minnesota. And so part of my job is to better track everything. We've been growing where the demand is. In some cases, we're playing catch up to our students. The Innovative Engineers student group started as a conversation on a 4-credit seminar. Students came back and I think bothered Professor Imbertson to start a student group, and they started hand building turbines in his basement. Or are you out of the basement now?
We're out of it.
Okay. And so students are challenging us. They want hands-on project-based experiences. They want to get out in the world. They're making their own programs. They're running their own budgets. And sometimes we're catching up to them. And the challenge we have, I think, and how is this changing the student experience? What do we gain? What do we lose? We lose, I think, some control, but the students gain a lot of control to create their own experiences. And today, we also want to discuss, I hope, where is this headed? A couple of our student group models, Engineers Without Borders. If you're not familiar, we'll also have our students talk about this, but this is all over the US. We have a very active chapter with projects going on in Honduras, Guatemala, and Uganda. Is that right? Innovative Engineers is sort of a homegrown group just here at the U of M, and they are working primarily in Nicaragua. That's a couple of our guys working on a handmade turbine down in Nicaragua. I think one of the great things about that group is they want to learn how to do it so that they can teach people how to do it themselves. And if you give someone something, but it breaks, what are they going to do with that? So they've been they grind blades out of PVC. They make stuff out of things they find. And there's also a great connection to what they're doing here in Minnesota. It's not just about the international experience. And I think that's true for Engineers Without Borders too. The students gain so much by organizing the project here. Some of our members don't actually even go abroad. They just get a lot of experience by helping with the logistics and the planning back here. International Ambassadors is a student group that is promoting opportunities like this and others. There's also work abroad, interning abroad, research placements abroad. And students are responding to these. They're excited about them. They see them as career developers too. Usually the research placements are during summer at a partner university or through some kind of government agency. We have our first 2 students going to Tokyo this summer, fully funded by the Japanese government at the Tokyo Institute of Technology. Alex did one in Germany through the DAAD and another in Korea at a partner university. But then there's also a capacity question. Sure, every student would like a paid internship in a lab in another country. But those numbers are maybe 10 or 12 a year. So there's not the capacity of traditional study abroad where you just sign up 25 people and go, which has its own challenges. Oh, and I had to mention sponsored research because, it's great when you see a press release from your own college saying, undergraduates in Antarctica. And then you have to call and ask those key questions. Are they insured? Do their parents know they're in Antarctica? Who is taking this guy to Antarctica? I learned a lot through press releases. You should always read the press releases of your own college. There's also competitions, which I think is a growing area, at least in Julian's world. The Akara Challenge, which blends design work here in Minnesota in a competitive setting, and then a site visit to India for the winning team. Is that a fair description? Yeah. And I've been thinking a lot about sort of the trade-offs, and I do want to hear from our students if they have any comments on this, but most of our students are going on these some kind of special opportunity. So as a college, that's very labor intensive because they're opting in sort of to non-traditional opportunities. And I do have to wonder if non-credit experiences are popular because the students get to sidestep some of those curriculum questions. Is it because our curriculum is too restrictive? Is that why they're looking for these? Do they not want to study a language that might be required for a different type of experience, which they have trouble fitting in? So are there issues that we're sort of dodging by promoting these? And I don't have all the answers yet. I'm just asking them. I see a high impact on the students who are getting involved. These students are coming back to us energized, coming back as student leaders, taking on new opportunities, new projects. I'm hearing from students about great job interviews and success and sort of a positive attitude. But I think we're hitting a point where some of these opportunities are so popular that we're not maybe being able to fit in everyone who wants to get involved. So we might be hitting that point. So if you guys have comments about that, especially at the student group level, are we hitting a point where not everyone gets a chance? Also, as I mentioned, are we disconnecting from the curriculum? There's no language study requirement. There's no specific course sequencing required. There's no integrated reflection. Students are packing up and going. And is that okay? Are we okay with that? If there's no grade, how do we keep people on track? How do we, if it's not a course, how do we make sure that everything gets done that we were hoping to get done? And how do we actually get this up to a number that significantly influences how many total students we're sending abroad? I've got this comment from Gary Downey, which is maybe not that optimistic, but speaking about the challenge of the total number of students in STEM majors in the US. And even if you could get as many as you could, some kind of cool research collaboration or something like that, can you really move the numbers and get everyone involved? And what do we do if students don't do what we expect them to do? If it's not a course and if they haven't paid some kind of program fee? Are the students kind of self-monitoring, which is something I'd like to hear too? Are they keeping each other honest? I know there's some students running around chasing down the other students for things like paperwork, so I know someone's hustling. What do we do if they don't do what we'd like them to do? What do we do if we genuinely disagree with the direction the group is going in? Students, we've had very positive experiences, but what if there's a genuine disagreement on the direction? If we introduce students to international partners, there's a leap of faith there. How do we know that they're going to represent what we want them to represent with the partner? So there is some faith there. And how do we know that these can keep going? If there's a highly energized group of students and they take on a project, I think EWB has a good model for continuation of projects in a specific location, and they have policies in place. But how do you make sure that these opportunities continue beyond your student champions who graduate? And how do we evolve these, or are we going to? Do we fold these into existing credit options? Do they become a sequence? Do they become a minor, a certificate? Julian has been wrestling with these questions lately, so that's been on my mind too. Do we kind of take it to a next level? Do we let things go as is? So without me continuing to talk at you, I'd like maybe to hear from our students for a few minutes each. And if you just want to describe what you were involved in or are involved in, if you have any comments on some of the questions I raised.
Okay, well, again, I'm Patrick Delaney. Is this working okay here? I can't hear myself. All right. So I was a student in electrical engineering and graduated in 2008. I basically got involved working in the developing world in engineering through personal connections that I had as early as 2004. And I speak Spanish, so I was able to make a connection down in Nicaragua in Central America, which is a few countries south of Mexico, and I had this this vision that was somewhat inspired by just trying to reconcile after the 9/11 attacks. Why is there so much inequity in the world? That was always a big driving factor inside of me. And then another factor was there was this engineer student in the 1980s who, during Nicaragua's conflict, his name was Benjamin Linder. He, after he graduated from university in Seattle, he went to Nicaragua and he was a civil engineering student. He just went and worked there for a really long time. It was totally extracurricular, it was completely apart from university. He tried to create microhydro plants, much like what the University of Minnesota is successfully doing today in Nicaragua. And he was actually killed because there was a conflict there. And it was a big national issue, and so things are not the same in Nicaragua like they were back then. But that was also always kind of an inspiration for me, just to try to continue this guy's work. And so I got into solar power, and I've turned that into a business today. So I'm bringing micro solar energy all over Central America. There's this product I create. I can talk to anybody about that afterwards if you're more interested. But just trying to focus on more about what you're interested in, what you're here for today for. I think that it's important to recognize that. Well, I don't have the numbers on how much activity is really going on nationwide. Adam's more of an expert on that. But if indeed there is a huge influx of students, like I think there is, engaging in this international activity, just think of the implications of that. When is the last time that engineers from a college setting have had the opportunity or to go out into the world and start adding value, right away? I mean, it was probably the 1800s. It's probably over 100 years ago, and so it's this huge amount of responsibility that I think colleges and universities have to try to direct that in the right way, because it's all centered in these academic institutions. So what comes to my mind is not only insurance and safety and grades and monitoring, but what about standardizations? What about the quality of work? What about how is this work actually impacting people's lives? We're very early in the process now, it seems like. So it's good to get out there and start building wind turbines out of carved PVC and actually get things working. But is there, what kind of standardizations are being used, to test that and make sure that's going to last a long time? And a lot of this we have to learn, because you don't want, how much standardization do you want to impose before it becomes just too expensive to do anymore? So I deal with that a lot with my light right now, and so that's why I bring it up. But we have to think about that, because this is stuff that Engineers Without Borders, innovative engineers, and countless people across the country, and I'm sure at your institutions, are producing and putting out there. So how is that going to last? How does it measure up? Is it quality stuff? Is it actually going to help people's lives, or is it going to break down in a few years? So that's something that I think is important to think about as well.
Hello, everybody. My name is David. I'm here with Innovative Engineers. Is this working? Yeah. Okay, this is weird. It's working. I'm here with Innovative Engineers, and my experience pertained to microhydro power production. And specifically, I went down to Nicaragua this January for 6 days, right? 6 days, and initially when we planned on going there, it was all. We had a lot of preparation. We had a lot of design work that we've done. Specifically, we were designing a turbine for, I would say, some semester or whatnot. And we had everything ready. We had everything in line to get produced by some parts by Loren, so it would be professional laser cut, and everything would be wonderful and nice, and the efficiencies would be great, and we would have this wonderful turbine that would just work amazingly. So we got down there, me, two more guys, and we met up with Patrick there as well, and started heading to this farm that was a decent amount further away from where we landed with our plane. And when we got down there, the thing we saw was way different than what we expected, and none of us was really prepared on what we're gonna see and what actually was there. So it kind of what that taught me really was that you kind of had like that entire experience taught me really on the fact that you can't really plan on everything, and it ended up turning that we had to really decide on the spot what are we gonna do, because initially when we designed the thing we only had 4 pictures, because the three student engineers that were working on, we actually never gone down there to the site. We only had 4 pictures from 4 really strange angles, and we went with our faith that it would work out, and we designed this thing, went down there, came down there, looked at each other and said, this is nothing like the pictures that we saw. So we kind of had to start on the spot a little bit, maybe from scratch. And that was a really interesting experience, because I've learned just from over that trip, 6-day trip, how to make decisions on the spot, what to do. Because I've never been asked in my life or my college career to make a decision that's really important and trusted that it's going to work out. And I mean, that's one of the things that is, I would say, way more important than any credit experience that I could ever gain. And I wish that actually there was a lot more, I'm going to say, real life experiences that engineering students specifically have to deal with, because I have one professor that really emphasizes this, but engineers, I mean, we will be asked to deal with stuff and build stuff that are going to influence people's lives, and in some sense, if you don't do it right, it can influence them in a bad way, especially maybe civil engineers. If you don't design right, someone might get hurt, mechanicals, electricals, anything like that. And just get a little feel of like what it actually is to make a decision and be confident in that decision is something that I really, really wish that the university could offer more. But it's kind of hard in some sense, because you want to control, like Adam said, like how do you make sure that it's all standardized and it all works out. In short, that's kind of what my thoughts were. Thank you.
My name is Alex Walter, and I had 2 summer experiences. So 2 summers ago, I went to Germany through the DAAD, the German government, and I did research with a research group in Greifswald, and then, I guess last summer I went to South Korea and did research with a different research group there. And I guess my favorite part about these 2 experiences was getting involved in the academic settings in different countries, because it's actually quite different from the academic settings here in the U.S. or here at the University of Minnesota. In South Korea, I learned that the students there, the graduate students, they work from like 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. every day. Well, not on the weekends, but every day, and that was a lot. And, it was just really different. But now that I'm back here, I feel like well, not sure what I'm trying to say.
That's okay.
Let's see.
You're allowed to pass the mic too.
I don't want to yet.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I worked more closely with you because you were just one of a couple students doing something like that. What did I not do before you left? Because I get busy and I try. But what did I not do that I should have done before you flew out?
Well, when I first got to South Korea, I had no idea how to get to the city that I was going to. Luckily, I met up with Patrick, another guy who was going to the same city, and I was able to go with him. He had one of the research group that he was working with pick him up from Gwangju, just city.
So I taught you some on-the-spot decision-making, some comfortable with ambiguity.
Right, so when you travel abroad, there's always these moments where everything could go wrong. And somehow it works out, or at least you figure out a way to make it work out. And I think that was the best thing I learned about traveling abroad.
Could you repeat the question?
She asked if they really do work from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. in the lab every day. And they really do. I guess they have to. They can't actually work for 14 hours a day. It's a lot. So they tend to take naps in the lab, I learned, or take breaks and watch a movie in the lab. But the professors, they want the graduate students in the lab for that long. So if the professor has a question about the research or a comment, they can go down to the lab and talk to them in person conveniently.
Do they have that impact on conversation?
So she asked if that has impacted how I have my time in the lab. And I guess I've looked at when the professors are actually in the building or in so I try to make sure that I'm in the lab at least when the professors are there. But other than that, I am not staying till 10 p.m.
Thanks, Alex.
Hi, I'm Scott Miller. I'm a junior in civil engineering. I'm here to speak on behalf of EWB. Is there anything specifically you want me to say?
Well, I
Just
think,
curious.
this is also our chance to tell folks on campus what we're doing, because not everyone knows what we're up to. Could you talk about how you guys are organized and into your projects and how you maintain project continuity?
Okay. So I guess specifically, I'm on our Uganda program, and actually Brian Bell, to my right, was on our Uganda project a few years back. So our organization is structured such that there's an administration, like president, vice president, finance officer, fundraising officer, et cetera, down the line. And then not under them, but just kind of to the side, we have the projects that all the students in the organization work on. So currently we're in Guatemala, Honduras, and Uganda. And these are the 3 countries we work in. For example, in Uganda, we've completed 3 projects since 2008. We've made a rainwater harvesting system in 2008. We did a groundwater system in 2009. And then we went back in 2010 to do some air quality improvements inside of homes with cook stoves and micro irrigation kits to improve agricultural output. So now in May of this year, I'll be going back on a team to build a rainwater harvesting system for another school of about 250 to 300 children. So the way these projects are structured is you have a project lead that runs the project usually for the academic calendar year, but it could be longer. So currently we had a project lead who's been in EWB for 4 years. And the way that you ensure project continuity is that, when you travel, you can't have everyone on your team travel. You have a max of 8 students who can go on one trip. And there are usually more than 8 students that are part of a project. project. So as Adam noted, not every student gets to travel in EWB, but everyone gets that sort of international consulting experience because you're working with a community that you've never met, and you may never meet them, but you're doing a project that meets their wants and their needs. So it's really a great experience in that regard. So, I mean, when we travel, we try to bring students from every segment of their academic timeline. So freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and grad students. We try to get a great diversity in that sense. And then you always want to make sure that you, like the project lead brings someone on pretty early on, and then they start structuring them kind of into that project lead role. Because in the end, the project lead really holds all the accountability of the success of the project. So, and under that, everyone kind of gets subgroup roles. So Engineers Without Borders really provides a great project experience before you go out into the real world and before you perhaps do a capstone project for your major. You can start as a freshman and you can go through perhaps one or two entire project cycles from assessment to implementation to maintenance and reporting on how well your project went. So I love it.
It's great. The structure, because we like with the role of the community in defining projects and the role of your freshman peer mentors. How that works.
Talk about that too.
Do you want to talk about it?
You can mention the professional mentors.
So Dr. Marshall asked how the structure of projects works in regards to what the community...
The role of the community and the role of your outside mentors.
The role of the community and the role of the outside mentors. So when we start a project, we contact a community, or they contact us usually first, and they usually have an issue that they want to have done first. And then we go on an assessment trip to this community to assess their needs and really get a good idea of what their resources and what the capabilities of the community are in terms of the type of project. For example, I did hear about a project once where the community wanted showers, but they didn't actually have clean drinking water yet, which is really interesting. So they have a want, but our job is kind of to assess what their wants are versus their needs, and then talk them through the process of, first let's get you clean drinking water, and then we can think about getting showers. So there's a lot of communication with communities. They may be half a world away, but we try to talk to them at least on a once-a-week basis with our contact in the community. And the role of the professional mentors is, in our student chapter, it is a student-run chapter. The professional mentors that we have are usually, they're professors or they're people who work out in consulting firms around the metro area. So their jobs are to ensure that the quality of the projects that we output are of high standards. All of our projects must be approved by our national organization of EWB USA before we travel. And they really, they provide that overall project view in terms of we've never done a full project. Some students haven't done a full project from start to end, so they provide that good comprehensive view of, have you thought about how are you going to report on the success of this certain part of the system? How are you going to make sure that it's maintained by the community? And by no means are the professional mentors driving the project. They allow us to put the motivation forth, and then they help guide the motivation through the project process, and they do a great job. So, okay.
There's a question?
Oh, yes. Both Engineers Without Borders and Innovative Engineers are non-credit. So, how do students pay for these trips? We fundraise all of the project costs in terms of material costs, and then we also fundraise usually about half of the travel costs for students. For example, traveling to Uganda costs $750 now for a student to fly, eat, lodge in Uganda. Otherwise, all of the project costs we raise from rotaries, corporations, internally at the U or elsewhere.
Pretty well. They're fundraising. They're very slick.
Is that true with innovative engineers also? What have you guys been doing?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. We fundraise our own funds for projects. We get funds from the university, from private donors, from companies, and then we have a certain amount that we said, all right, we're going to give this much away for traveling, and then we divide it up amongst the people that are travel, and then the rest is pretty much covered by ourselves, and then expenses there, and then you have to cover yourself as well.
My name is Brian Bell. I studied civil engineering and architecture here, graduated in 2009. I was also involved with Engineers Without Borders as president and project leader. As president, I helped develop the organizational structure and started to establish our financial base kind of in the earlier years of our development. And as project leader, I worked on the Uganda project in the phase 1 and 2 projects, developing rainwater harvesting system and the solar-powered groundwater system. And after I've graduated in 2009, I pursued a master's in sustainable development from Utrecht University in the Netherlands. And during my master's, I had the opportunity to pursue 2 research internships, one with UN Habitat in Nepal. That's the part of the UN that works on urban and rural housing, water, sanitation, energy issues in developing countries, as well as an internship with the government of India's Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation in northern India for my master's research. And I forgot to mention, during my time here, I was also able to participate in the Akara Challenge, which is a 4-credit opportunity, which Dr. Marshall and Fred Rose in the back have been organizing since it started in spring of 2009. So as a student with Engineers Without Borders especially, I was the beneficiary of a non-credit opportunity here at the U of M that was organized with the support of a faculty advisor and the dean's staff at CSE. And I had the opportunity to develop leadership skills and work on projects that were far more intense than any class that I ever took at the U of M. Even though it was a non-credit opportunity, the great thing about organizations like Innovative Engineers and Engineers Without Borders they're not for credit, which means that the students who are involved are the most motivated ones who are dedicated to that cause. You're not on a project team with people who don't want to be there, which can sometimes happen, in classes. And it's a fun experience. Working with professional mentors, you create contacts with, experts in the industry who you can then, look to when you're getting onto your career path. As a non-credit opportunity, there are trade-offs. Students spend a lot of time on these opportunities, and it takes away from time for class, for time for internships. But like I said, there's an opportunity for project management experience that you just don't get in classes. At the same time, working on a non-credit opportunity gives the students, the experience and the chance to travel abroad internationally and develop skills, understanding other cultures. And in today's globalized world, there's never been a more important time for engineers to have that international experience, familiarity with working in foreign cultures, with, working through Skype and phone and email to develop understanding of clients' needs, and then to develop solutions that meet those needs on the ground.
Let's go.
Questions? Okay. Have any of the students who are on the panel learned about the opportunities that are available here when coming to the U of M, when deciding to come here? And I know for some of the students in Engineers Without Borders, it was a factor in their decision to come. Loren Butler, who's been the president of EWB the previous 2 years, that was one of the factors that guided her decision to come here. For me, I found the role with EWB after being here for 3 years already. So in my junior year, I got involved. And during those first 3 years, I was pretty much just a student having summer internships like most students, and I was looking for additional experiences to build my experience and build my resume. And I never expected that I'd find something as interesting as an opportunity like EWB or Innovative Engineers here during those first few years.
Fred?
Yes, Brian.
Have the experiences working with student group non-credit opportunities at the U of M, how they influence project or graduate school applications and career path. Well, for me personally, they've guided my path. They've determined my path to do a master's in international master's in sustainable development, and that was all based on my experience with Engineers Without Borders. During my time in Uganda, especially, I recognized that engineers have an important role to play in sustainable development in developing countries, but at the same time, there are a lot of social, institutional, political factors that you just don't learn about in an engineering curriculum, and you shouldn't have take time for all those things necessarily, but they're important in the real world, and I wanted to learn about those, and so that's why I pursued the Master's in Sustainable Development. And for my career now, I'm looking to get into international infrastructure and technology development. And I graduated last semester, and I'm applying for jobs right now in that field. So at least for myself, I can say that it's determined my path pretty strongly.
But did the school?
Sure. How did the school look at my experiences? I think that the school and the jobs I'm applying for are more interested in experiences I had with EWB than my working experiences at internships and summers at research laboratories at the University of Minnesota.
Another question?
Yeah. So are we in EWB involved with recognizing failures? And it's true, every project doesn't succeed. And nationally, there are more than 300 chapters of Engineers Without Borders in the U.S., and it's an international organization as well with national chapters in more than 20 countries. So there are a lot of experiences out there, good learning experiences where people have not come back home with fully successful project outcome. Personally, I had the experience of working on some projects that didn't turn out exactly the way we thought they would. For example, the Uganda project that we did groundwater in, the pump controller, which we installed at the school, failed within the first year, and we had to replace it. And so the project failed. We don't know exactly why. It could have been hit by lightning or something. And it was a maintenance failure, a sustainability failure on our part. And fortunately, we're involved over the longer term with this community. So we had the opportunity to go back and try to fix the problem. And at the larger scale, EWB Canada is the one who did a TED Talk on failures. We haven't been in coordination with them at the same level.
Can I ask our faculty to talk about when things don't work?
How much time do you got? 4 minutes. Well,
this would be a good session if you didn't talk.
yeah, so I'm going to ruin the session by talking. Where to start? There's too much to say. Actually, this might be something to say. When did you graduate high school, Patrick?
2001.
Croatia?
2008. 2009.
2009.
2004.
So I think by most definitions, you're all millennials.
Yeah.
Okay, millennials are different than us. And what finger do you use to push buttons? You heard this? I use this one. Millennials use this. They use their thumb. They're different people. And there's been a lot written about millennials. I've heard so many talks about millennials and how are we going to handle millennials. And most of them go something like this. Millennials are the most self-involved people on the earth, and they feel totally entitled. For doing nothing at all, they feel entitled to everything. True? And I think it's true. But they never take it all the way to the end. Why do they feel entitled to anything? Because they're human beings. Because they're human beings, they feel entitled. And because that's their core belief, they believe everybody on our planet is entitled. And I see this in our students now, that they want to do this because, it's good for the resume, it's good experience, it'll be good for the job. But if you really dig down deep, they say they do it because it's just the right thing to do. Because these people are entitled to my help, and they're going to help me as well. And I really see that we have a generation which can do amazing things that we couldn't do because our mindset was different. And whatever we can do to encourage that and move that along would be very valuable. 2 minutes, and I'm going to give it to Julian, and you're going to wrap it all up.
I agree with everything that's been said. Is that a good wrap up?
That's really good. But you got more to say.
Being involved in these programs really motivates me. I guess that's what I'd like to say. It's really inspiring to me because we're people, first and foremost, before we're professors and students and majors and this, that, and the other thing. Students want to have an impact. They want to find meaning in life. Everybody wants those same things. And this gives us a way to do that. And so this, I just say, my involvement in this has just been really inspiring to me to see the tremendous efforts that students will go through to reach these ends. To the question of failure, that's when we learn. And so failure is a part of this process, and recognizing that is and embracing that. Adam started with a bunch of questions that were up there that I don't think any of us have answers to. They're really good questions to ask. The one comment I might make that kind of crosses all of the questions he raised is, on the one hand, all the experiences we're talking here, and there's many. I believe very much in let 1,000 flowers bloom. There's many different opportunities out there, some of which are structured, some are unstructured, some are many students, some are few students. That's great. We're a large university. Let's do some experiments and see what works well for the students and what doesn't work. On the specific issue of, okay, well, these are extracurricular. What about the University of Minnesota is not so engaged? I would just say I think there's a continuum of two factors that are not perfectly aligned. Maybe not exactly orthogonal, but there are two factors. One is it extracurricular or in the curriculum? And there's a range. So the ACARA challenge, which you haven't heard much of a description about, some of aspects of ACARA are within the curriculum, and some are sort of in the middle, and some are outside. And that's fine. That's one range of how our students gain credit for this in terms of academic credit. And then a separate issue is, are they engaged with the University of Minnesota as they go about and do whatever their experience is, either overseas or in another community, which, by the way, those other communities can be very close to home in terms of number of miles and still be a different community. But how engaged are they with the university? And that's a different issue. You can be highly engaged and have a structured process at the university overseas, or act entirely outside of the university. And you can be kind of anywhere in those four quadrants. Thanks for coming.